What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me for my third annual mock draft with a twist. Now, a lot of mock drafts go out there, predict where players are going to go. We give recommendations to teams. I am a consultant. I am recommending what teams should do. A couple of years ago, I told the Miami Dolphins to take Lamar Jackson. They didn't listen. I told them to take Drew Lock. They didn't listen. I also, at one point, told the Green Bay Packers to take DJ Moore. They didn't listen. A couple of years ago, I told the Buffalo Bills to take Josh Allen. They listened. So you're welcome. Or I'm sorry, depending on how you feel about that pick. So let's start at number one, the Cincinnati Bengals, who have to take Joe Burrow. Now, I know a lot of people will come out and be like, hey, look at what San Francisco did last year when they took Nick Bosa. That worked out pretty well, and it did, and that's a great theory. The thing is, the 49ers had their franchise quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. And say what you will about Andy Dalton, how you feel about him, the Bengals are moving on. At some point, you have a 2011 Corolla that you have some loyalty to because it gave you some great years. But now you're of the mind that you are going to move on. You want to get a Tesla, you want to get a hybrid, whatever it is. It is time to move on. Joe Burrow is that quarterback. The Bengals have actually done a nice job of drafting quarterbacks going back from Carson Palmer to Andy Dalton. Joe Burrow might end up being the best of those three, so don't mess around with this. Don't trade out of that pick. Stick with Joe Burrow. You will be very happy. You will have your quarterback for 15 years. Now, that leads us to number two, the Washington Redskins, who could also be in a very similar situation to where, why don't they pull the Josh Rosen, Kyler Murray? Why don't they pull the Cam Newton, Jimmy Clausen? Because you look at it, and Tua Tagovailoa is sitting there, and if he is somebody that you think is going to be an exceptional quarterback, who could end up being the best quarterback from this draft class, why wouldn't you take them? Why wouldn't you take him here? Because that makes a lot of sense. But we're recommending that Washington takes Chase Young. And the thing is, Washington, you're not close. You're not close to the Super Bowl. You might not even be close to the playoffs. And as a matter of fact, if you suck the way a lot of teams or a lot of people feel that you will, you could actually be in the mix for Trevor Lawrence next year. Right? You know what I'm saying? So could you imagine? This sounds like the start of a football life. The Washington Redskins dynasty of the 2020s. In back-to-back years, they took Chase Young and Trevor Lawrence. So if Dwayne Haskins flames out as not good, odds are you're going to be in the mix for Trevor Lawrence next year. So take your defensive end. Let's move on to number three. And Detroit, here's my idea for you. I would definitely move down. I would try to trade. I would try to get the Dolphins to move up. I would try to get the Chargers to move up. Get one of those teams to move up because you will still end up with the ability to draft a great defensive player and pick up a little bit of draft capital. Now, the defensive player that I'm going to tell you to pick is Isaiah Simmons. Number one, do you watch college football, brah? Isaiah Simmons is a game changer. And I am of the mind that if he is not as good as Chase Young, he will be in the conversation. So I understand everybody wants you to draft a cornerback. I suggest you do not do that. I say you go with Isaiah Simmons. Now at number four, you're the New York Giants. You have a need at offensive line, which you've needed for quite some time. And I understand all of that. I say that you draft Jeff Okudah. That's right. I understand. Yeah, you gave James Bradbury a huge contract. You used a first-round pick on DeAndre Baker. I understand all of that. Those guys are like when you're going to a cocktail party. Do you remember cocktail parties? But it's like you're on your way to a cocktail party. You're like, you know what? I'm going to stop at Del Taco along the way. Just in case the food sucks. At least that way, I will have something in my system. Okudah is the bacon-wrapped shrimp that you show up and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is here? I'm going to fill up on this. And I know it's not necessarily a position of need, but he is a definite game changer. And when you're in a league or a division that has Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott, you can go out there and you take this guy. And plus, you know, you guys give a lot of receiving touchdowns last year to wideouts. Why not shore up that position? You will have a dominant front. So, if you're the Miami Dolphins sitting there at number 5, the only pick that makes sense for you is Tua Tagovailoa. You have to take him. And remember, I told you, Lamar Jackson a couple of years ago, you didn't want to listen. Now you take Tua. This was the guy going into this season that a lot of people thought you should have tanked your entire year for. You didn't do that. You played tough down the stretch, but now you have an opportunity to draft that player. You have to absolutely make that pick. He is a franchise quarterback. I'm not saying you pull 13 out of the rafters. This isn't Jerry Rice going to Seattle. But Tua Tagovailoa is a game-changing talent. And if you're scared about an injury, I don't know, he might be injured. You know what? You said that stuff when Drew Brees had a torn labrum. And what has happened over the last decade? Drew Brees has been one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL for well over a decade. All because you were scared off. Don't be scared off. You still got Ryan Fitzpatrick. If Tua's not ready to play week 1, you can go with Ryan Fitzpatrick. You do that, you're set, you're ready to go. So there you go. Number 6. Now, if you're the Chargers, I'm telling you, jump up. Call the Lions. Call the Giants. You need Tua. You need to make a splash. You're in Los Angeles, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, hey, you should take Justin Herbert or do something like that. That would make a lot of sense. I guess Justin Herbert will probably end up being a solid NFL quarterback. If you look at him, he was not great against the top competition. His best games did not come when it mattered the most. So I feel like Justin Herbert's going to be a fine NFL player. But you had a fine NFL quarterback for the last, 20 some odd years? How did that work out for you? No, you've got to do something bold. You got to do something rash. You're going to be going into a stadium with the LA Rams, a team that you should be better than for the foreseeable future. The thing is you need a star. LA is all about the stars. Los Angeles and the region has the best baseball player on the planet in Mike Trout. Maybe the second best in Anthony Rendon. They have LeBron James, Anthony Davis. That's why the Chargers, I recommend you take Jordan Love. It's a wild card pick. It's an absolute roll of the dice. It's unconventional. It's so un-Chargers-like. And I remember a number of years ago when you passed on Michael Vick and you took LaDainian Tomlinson. Now you obviously did get one of the best running backs in NFL history. But what would have Mike Vick have done for that Chargers franchise? You think of Madden 04. You think of all these crazy things that happened with Mike Vick. And I understand there were some legal problems. I'm not trying to dismiss those. But this is an opportunity. And if you're in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert is not going to get it done. Jordan Love has the ability to be either one of the best picks in the draft or one of the worst. The thing is, Chargers, you need to take that chance. You took a chance when you moved out of San Diego. Take that chance now. Now for the Carolina Panthers, all right, smart thing, take Derek Brown, defensive tackle. You've got some changes there. Sorry, I could go on and on about this. Derek Brown, that's your pick. Very smart. 8, Arizona Cardinals. You're going to take Tristan Wirfs. And here's my thing. You've won the offseason. You have fleeced Bill O'Brien. You took advantage of that man, and you should almost be ashamed. There has not been a team who has won the offseason like this since, 2 years ago, when the Cleveland Browns acquired an all-world wide receiver to go with their second-year quarterback from Oklahoma. Does this sound familiar? And what happened to the Browns last season? The reason why, they traded some offensive line talent to help acquire Odell Beckham Jr. Thankfully for the Cardinals, you didn't have to do that. But in order to make sure that you do not repeat the mistakes of the Cleveland Browns, go out there, address your offensive line. It's that simple. Tristan Wirfs is my pick. If your scouting department has somebody else, that's fine as well. I am telling you, draft an offensive lineman. And let's go to number 9 of my friends down in Duval. And again, you know what? I'm going to say you go offensive line as well. And you go Jedrick Wills. Great offensive lineman. Now, listen, I know you need some help on the defensive side of the football. You've lost a lot of big-name players and guys like Simmons and Okudah. They would have been wonderful for you. If you want to move up in the draft because you have some extra picks, I don't hate that either. But if you're going to stay at the number 9 spot, you got to address the offensive line. So here's the thing. Doug Marrone is going to want to run the football. use those other picks later on in the draft to address your defense. Go for your offensive line right here. We would suggest taking Wills. Now, Cleveland Browns, the need on the offensive line still exists for you, which is why I say you should draft Mekhi Becton at the offensive tackle. You've got Jack Conklin. You are going to go ahead and put him on the right side. That's my right side. The right side of the offensive line. You just take Mekhi, you put him on the left side, and now, all of a sudden, your offensive line woes are finished. And as a matter of fact, if I can throw in a quick little fantasy take here, if this happens, go all in on Nick Chubb. With Kevin Stefanski running this team, they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They've got Andy Yanovich acquired from the Denver Broncos. So I say, you know what? Load up on Nick Chubb. Don't be afraid to go after Baker Mayfield this season either. But you got to go for the offensive line. That was your mistake. Well, hiring the wrong coach was your mistake last year. But also not addressing the offensive line. You know, when you're trading for offensive linemen during the 4th week of preseason, that's never a good sign. Thankfully, you can address that here in the draft. Make sure that you do it. Now at 11, this is where it gets fun. What are the Jets going to do? You could use some offensive linemen. And I know the Jets, they've got Quincy Enunwa. They brought in Rashad Perriman. They brought in a bunch of mid-carders, which is fine. But if you can go ahead and get a main event level player like CeeDee Lamb, I would absolutely do that right here. And I know it's not going to matter if we're not protecting our quarterback. That's fine. You know what? You got other draft picks to go after your offensive lineman. If you can get the top wide receiver in the draft, show Sam Darnold that you're serious about making it happen. I understand it might be sensible, but with 3 linemen going off the board, you got to make this pick. Now, obviously, if Cleveland or somebody else, if the Cardinals draft a lineman and one of those guys fall to you, absolutely. But given the way that I've broken out the draft board right here, CeeDee Lamb goes to the Jets. You're welcome. The Jets, New York, you have a superstar wide receiver once again, which means the Las Vegas Raiders should be able to grab one of the top receivers that they're looking at. But first, let me give you a little bit of a tip here. Here's what I would do if I was the Raiders. I would call up the Green Bay Packers and say, we will trade you pick number 12, pick number 80 for Davante Adams. He's going to have a big contract coming up soon. And the Packers don't like to pay anybody outside of their quarterback. So would you want pick 12, which would allow the Green Bay Packers to replace Davante Adams immediately with a rookie? They would have pick 80. And I don't know, it might not be a bad move. It would reunite Derek Carr and Davante Adams, a couple of Bulldog legends. I would at least make that call and see what happens. And I know you're going to think that that's crazy. But over the last number of years, look at all the wide receivers who have been traded. Amari Cooper, Antonio Brown, OBJ, DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs. It is not out of the realm of possibility for these teams to move on from wide receivers. Who knows? Maybe Davante Adams is frustrated playing for the Green Bay Packers. Maybe he wants to go back out to the West Coast. Maybe he would want to play with Derek Carr. Give it a shot. And if not, I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm not saying that Green Bay would take that pick. But I will tell you that no matter what, they're going to end up with a stud wide receiver because otherwise they take Jerry Jeudy and they're fine. Which leads us to pick number 13 of the San Francisco 49ers, who again will probably be in the lookout for a wide receiver. But with Lamb and Jeudy gone, Henry Ruggs could be a nice spot here. But I actually think that the 49ers, if you're sitting here at 13, I would go at Javon Kinlaw. You have 2 picks in the first round. I know a lot of people thought that they made that pick of trading away DeForest Buckner of the mind that they will either get Lamb or Jeudy with both those guys off the board. Why not go back and take the best defensive tackle that's still remaining right there? You replace DeForest Buckner. And the thing with Kinlaw is that he's a great player who's played his best in big games. And you put him on a team that's got Nick Bosa, and you got Eric Armstead, and you got all these other studs on defense. Kinlaw has the ability to be a Pro Bowl player sooner rather than later, especially in that defense. You probably won't even miss a beat. You got it, the pick number 31. We will hope that there will be a wide receiver for you then. We will move on. At pick number 14, I'm going to say you go. This is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got to go with the offensive tackle. First of all, Tampa Bay Buccaneers love the new uniforms. Those look amazing. Second, you need a running back. I'm not going to take a running back at pick number 14. It is just not prudent here. So, you know what? And plus, at pick number 45, J.K. Dobbins could be there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's Zach Moss of Utah. There's a lot of guys you could go with at pick number 45. So why not take Thomas to protect your most valuable asset? Well, second most valuable asset next to the big pirate ship, which we didn't get to see Kevin Owens jump off of in WrestleMania, unfortunately. But yes, you protect Tom Brady. You build the offensive line. Let's move on to pick number 15. Henry Ruggs III would be the pick here for the Denver Broncos. They got rid of Emmanuel Sanders last year, sending him to San Francisco. Now you can go ahead and replace him. As I'm moving around here, excuse me. Now you look at this team. They've already added Melvin Gordon into the mix, and I think that Melvin Gordon is going to end up being pretty good for them. I know a lot of people were shocked, but it's like, no. They want Melvin Gordon. They're going to run him to death. You put him in a team with Phillip Lindsay, Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, Noah Fant. Now Henry Ruggs III comes in and is an immediate impact player. Fantasy-wise, maybe not as much, but that offense is all of a sudden going to be loaded. You're going to give Drew Lock an opportunity to really step forward during his second year, and you've got some firepower to hopefully compete against the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending world champions, and a Las Vegas Raiders team that should end up being pretty good. Now, let's move on to pick number 16. I recommend the Atlanta Falcons take C.J. Henderson at quarterback. And, at cornerback, I should say, and as somebody who plays a lot of fantasy football, I usually love playing guys that are going up against that Falcons defense, especially if you have shares of Michael Thomas or Chris Godwin or DJ Moore or somebody like that. So Atlanta, you need to address this immediately. And now that corner Desmond Trufant was released, you're going to have to go out there and find somebody to replace him. I think that C.J. Henderson could end up being a really good one. He's not a great tackler, but I think Atlanta has done pretty well with cornerbacks who weren't necessarily great tacklers. That's what I'm talking about, Dion. And he's not going to, but the thing is CJ won't be able to wear number 21 because Todd Gurley grabbed that number. That is the weirdest thing of the offseason. But in any event, Falcons, I suggest you go with C.J. Henderson. 17, Dallas Cowboys. I really like the idea of you guys getting a cornerback. C.J. Henderson would have been my recommendation, but I gotta be fair. I gotta tell the Falcons who to pick. So I'm gonna say you take Clavon Chaisson. And I think you're really going to like this one. And, here's the thing. Pass rusher is still a need for this defense, especially now that my guy Bobby Quinn flipped the coin, decided to go to Chicago. Hey, welcome, Bobby Quinn. You could also go for a safety here. Xavier McKinney is also on the board, but I like having the edge rusher right there. And you know what? Low-key, the Cowboys have done a really nice job of drafting defensive talent over the last number of years. I mean, not you, Taco Charlton, but a lot of the other guys, Xavier Woods, Leighton Vander Esch, they've done a nice job, is what I'm trying to say. Jalen Smith, they've done a really nice job, and I think Chaisson would end up being a pretty nice pick here. I would also start thinking about, too, if I'm the Cowboys, there's an opportunity to look at somebody like Patrick Queen or somebody like that, because you need some depth at the linebacker position. Vander Esch actually did have a little bit of a neck injury. Sean Lee played 16 games for the first time in a long time. So there's an opportunity there, but I think if Chaisson is still there as an edge rusher, I think he can come in, and especially on that defense, contribute immediately. Now, if you're the Miami Dolphins sitting there at pick 18, I would suggest that you take Xavier McKinney. He would be a pretty good option for you for a team that's done a really nice job of rebuilding a defense. It really was kind of the strength of the team last year. You got rid of Minkah Fitzpatrick, which is fine, but you bring in McKinney. And listen, the division is wide open. And I know a lot of people just automatically assume that the Buffalo Bills are going to go out and win the division, but the Dolphins played pretty well down the stretch last year. I understand the Jets were 7-9 as well, so it's not like this team or this league or this division is devoid of talent. But I think with all the moves that you made in the offseason, you got like Van Noy and all these dudes, and you're looking pretty sharp. That defensive secondary could be really good. One of the best in the leagues if you go out there and you take McKinney right here. I know that you could probably draft an offensive lineman. I love Austin Jackson a lot, but I think McKinney is more of a home run play somebody who's going to step in, start from day one. So that's where I would go. Which moves us on to pick number 19 in the Chicago Bears. I recommend you take Khalil Mack. Oh, wait, you've already done that. Perfect. Well, this pick is going to go to the Raiders. You need some cornerback help. Now, assuming whether you've got Devontae Adams here, you got the Packers to make that move, or you drafted Jerry Jeudy, you got your wide receiver. Now you got to look at the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with Jalen Johnson, a junior out of Utah. I think he's got a lot of good football in here, and I know that, you know, you look at what the Raiders could do here. They could go linebacker as well. Again, Patrick Queen, Kenneth Murray, one of those guys, but they did sign my guy, Nick Kwiatkowski. They also signed Corey Littleton during the offseason, so I don't know that linebacker is definitely a need right there, so why not take a cornerback like Jalen Johnson? Which leads us to number 20, our friends. This is a double up. This is a double up. The Dolphins are doubling up. The Raiders are doubling up. The Jags are going to be doubling up right here. And this is going to be a little bit of an unconventional pick, but I would suggest to you, Jacksonville, that you take Patrick Queen. And ever since Telvin Smith has walked away from football, there's been a little bit of a void. You put him and Miles Jack will be your two outside linebackers. I think that would be a pretty good mix for you guys. I think Patrick Queen is actually an undervalued talent in this draft. He's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He's an impact player. I know I'm using that a lot. Maybe I've been watching a lot of TNA. Tommy Dreamer, shout out. What up? But you need playmakers on that defense once again. That's what made the Jags so good a number of years ago, is you had guys that went out and made plays. And this might not be the most traditional fit, and perhaps there's other guys you're looking at on the board like, yeah, but I think as long as, like, as far as football ability goes, Patrick Queen would be the guy that I would recommend right here. And I don't think that you would regret it at all. It might not be the pick that you would want, and you'd probably be bitching about it on Twitter and be like, this was stupid. But you know what? I guarantee you Patrick Queen is going to be a good football player in this league. The Jags would be lucky to have him at number 20. At number 21, Philadelphia Eagles, always needing a wide receiver. That's all right. And I know that you're probably going to be tempted to try to trade up. Henry Ruggs is a player that a lot of the Eagles fans want to draft, and I understand, but I would go with Justin Jefferson. I like him. Why do I like him over, like, let's say, T. Higgins or whatever? Well, that's a fair question. But Jefferson is a pretty great route runner. I've talked to DJ, Daniel Jeremiah, about this. I'm like, he's a good route runner, right? Like, I always feel like, am I seeing this correctly? But I've gotten my validation from him. And besides, you know what? You look at what he did in that LSU offense with Burrow and offensive coordinator Joe Brady. This is a guy who walks in ready to go from day one. And if he lands in a situation like Philadelphia, I would expect him to end up being the most productive rookie receiver. I know that someday we will be arguing about CeeDee Lamb and Jeudy and all those guys, but I think for this season at 2020, Justin Jefferson ends up being the best. At pick number 22, I'm going to have the Minnesota Vikings. I would recommend you also take a wide receiver, and I would go after T. Higgins right here. Sometimes, you know what, I understand the thing with Stephon Diggs. These relationships run their course, and it's time for you guys to move on. You did what you had to do, but you bring in T. Higgins, who could do a lot of nice things. He could stretch the field. You put him there with Adam Thielen. I think that would be a good move. Keep Kirk Cousins happy. You're going to keep him around for a couple of extra years. T. Higgins, solid wide receiver. At pick number 23, it's the New England Patriots, and I can't believe that I'm going to say this, but Justin Herbert is still on the board. He is the player that I would draft here. And it just would be fitting for the New England Patriots to go out there and get Justin Herbert. And here's the thing. I know I told the Chargers not to take him. The Chargers will not make Justin Herbert a good quarterback. Think about this with the Chargers. They had Drew Brees and did nothing with him. They had Phillip Rivers. They were fine. Justin Herbert is going to be another fine quarterback. You look at what Drew Brees did with another organization. Justin Herbert would go to the New England Patriots and be a winner, would be a great quarterback. You think about it, what have the New England Patriots done over the last 20 years under Bill Belichick? They took pick 199 and made him the greatest quarterback in NFL history. They won 11 games with Matt Castle. They were winning games with Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo when Tom Brady was serving a suspension. The New England Patriots will find a quarterback and make him good. Justin Herbert goes to the wrong situation, it's not going to work out for him. He goes to New England, he's an all-pro. That's just the way these things work. So there you go. 24. New Orleans Saints. Laviska Shenault Jr. Now, he's been described as a game changer by my friend Daniel Jeremiah, arguably the best athlete in the draft, according to him. And you look at what the Saints have, they really don't have a lot of needs. And this is kind of a luxury pick right here. And they've done very well in this spot in other drafts. And you think of this team, and they've got Alvin Kamara for the time being, Michael Thomas, they brought in Emmanuel Sanders. Shenault would be the perfect person to, and I know that his route tree is not robust, but you're like, bro, run down the field, run some jet sweeps. We'll find creative ways to get the football into your hands, and you will go out and you will be an immediate fan favorite there in New Orleans. Everybody will be buying your jersey. People will love you. He is a great player. There's only a number of teams that would actually be able to use Shenault to the best of his abilities. New Orleans is one of them. San Francisco is one of them. The Rams would be one of them if they had a first-round pick in the next 20 years. But New Orleans would be a perfect spot for him. At 25, A.J. Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson. Listen, the defense used to be the top, the calling card of the Minnesota Vikings, but it's starting to fall off a little bit. And I know you have Mike Hughes and Holton Hill and Chris Boyd and those guys. They're fine. They're mid-carders. Get him in a winner. AJ Styles, Terrell. That's where I would go. Number 26. You know what? The Miami Dolphins are up once again. And, I felt bad earlier by not suggesting that you take Austin Jackson. Well, guess what? Here he is at 26. And I know that he's fallen in a lot of drafts. And there is probably a good chance that he falls to the second round because teams don't really get an opportunity to check these guys out, really put them through the rigors. But Austin Jackson is going to be a great NFL player. And if Tua is not available to go in the first year and Austin's not available to go in the first year, who cares? 2021, these guys are going to come out and they're going to light up the league. At pick number 27, the Seattle Seahawks. You're going to want to trade down because that's pretty much what you always do. I say you take Ross Blacklock, the defensive tackle, out of TCU. You know what? You need somebody there on the defensive line. He's obviously not the same position as Jadeveon Clowney, but you need somebody who can create some pressure. No matter where he lines up on the defensive line, for him it'll be the defensive tackle. I think he would be a great pick. Pick number 28. The most controversial one, and I know that Raven fans don't want to hear this, but I would go with DeAndre Swift because you can draft a running back that you know that you're going to be able to control for 5 years. And I know Raven fans are like, we're in win now mode. Give us Kenneth Murray, which is fine. And if you want to do that, I'm just giving you my recommendation. If you think they should take a linebacker, I think you can find a linebacker at another spot. But you know what? You're going to need to be cost controlled for years. And Gus Edwards is fine. But Mark Ingram is 30. DeAndre Swift is the best running back in this draft. I'm not saying that you're bringing him in to be some guy who is going to, sit the bench for a year in redshirt. No, remember a number of years ago when Mark Ingram was in New Orleans, they had Ingram and Adrian Peterson. They still drafted Alvin Kamara. And I understand you could find other values later in the draft. That's every position. That's every position. You can find good linebackers in the second and third round. If you have the opportunity to add the best running back in the draft here at pick number 28, I am going to suggest that you do it. At pick number 29, the Tennessee Titans, the Yetur Gross-Matos, edge rusher. Look, you lost Cameron Wake. I know you brought in Vic Beasley. You can't have enough pass rushers, especially in a conference that has Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson. You're going to want to do it. All right, pick number 30. Brandon Ayuk goes to the Green Bay Packers. At least that's what I would suggest. Listen, how many draft picks have you wasted on defense over the years, Green Bay Packers, without even trying once to surround Aaron Rodgers with as much available talent as possible? You got lucky with Aaron Jones. You sort of got lucky with Devontae Adams. Go ahead, grab him another receiver. You don't have many more years with him left. This is the last hurrah for Aaron Rodgers, so at least try to surround him with some talent. And you know what? The San Francisco 49ers, you're going to get a wide receiver as well. And I'm going to say Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims. Like, I love him. He's a guy that goes out and wins a lot of 50-50 battles. Again, he's another player whose route tree might not be the most extensive, but that's fine. You know what? We heard the same thing last year with DK Metcalf, and he went out and was pretty good for those Seattle Seahawks. Denzel Mims comes in, immediate impact. You know what? Debo is going to take a step up this year. You still have George Kittle as your top pass catcher, so you're fine there. Denzel Mims, you did it. Congratulations. You replaced DeForest Buckner. You got a solid wide receiver, somebody who could be great. So you're all set. And at number 32, Kenneth Murray still on the board. These things just kind of happen, and I know there's probably better fits. Perhaps somebody else takes him. Perhaps the Ravens take him. I understand all of that. But I'm just telling the Kansas City Chiefs that the way that this board broke down, if you have an opportunity to get Kenneth Murray, you're just going to have to go ahead and add him when you can. And there it is. That was my third annual mock draft with a twist, what teams should do. This wasn't a prediction piece at all. Although if I get some things right or some of these guys, they do well, then I will come back and crow about it. I will also eat it. I was very high on Josh Rosen a couple of years ago, just to prove that I don't always get everything right. But you knew that because you saw my 49ers pick last year, so back off. But anyways, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to this page. I cannot thank you enough. We do appreciate you. And if you want to also download the Adam Rank podcast, which is available on iHeartRadio, which is available on Apple Pods and all that good stuff. But thank you so much. Follow me on Twitter at Adam Rank.